In The 48 Laws of Power, Robert Greene presents a penetrating analysis of power dynamics, drawing from centuries of history, strategy, and human behavior. Power, Greene argues, is not just a political tool or a weapon of leaders. It is woven into every social interaction, every negotiation, and every relationship. To navigate the world successfully, one must understand the rules that govern influence, control, and authority. Greene begins by dismantling the comforting illusion that power is earned purely through virtue or merit. History is full of examples where cunning, strategy, and calculated action prevailed over honesty or idealism. From royal courts to corporate offices, the ability to observe, adapt, and manipulate social forces determines who rises and who falls. The book's central premise is stark. Power is amoral. It can be used for good or ill, but its mechanisms are consistent. Understanding them is not a guide to tyranny, it is a survival manual for anyone seeking influence in a competitive world. Greene's laws reveal patterns of behavior that have repeated throughout time. The rise of ambitious courtiers, generals who manipulate perception, and leaders who master the art of timing, secrecy, and misdirection. Greene emphasizes that power is often invisible. It is not always about force or authority. It is about perception, timing, and the subtle manipulation of relationships. A single strategic word, a carefully timed gesture, or a seemingly small act of patience can shift the balance of influence dramatically. The 48 Laws of Power is as much a study of human psychology as it is a guide to strategy. Greene illustrates each law with historical examples, drawing lessons from figures such as Machiavelli, Sun Tzu, Louis XIV, and modern business magnates. Through these narratives, readers are invited to observe patterns of ambition, caution, and cunning, skills that are as relevant in boardrooms as in battlefields. The book is unapologetically realistic. Greene does not moralize, he analyzes. He warns that ignorance of power leaves individuals vulnerable. Those who fail to recognize ambition, envy, or manipulation in others risk being outmaneuvered. Conversely, those who master these laws can anticipate danger, exploit opportunities, and navigate complex social landscapes with confidence. If you want to uncover the secrets of influence, strategy, and human behavior, make sure to like this video, subscribe to Read and Rise, and join us as we explore the 48 laws that have shaped history and still determine power today. Law 1. Never outshine the master. Greene opens the first law with a fundamental principle of power. Never make those above you feel inferior. Throughout history, those who dared to outshine their superiors, whether intentionally or through natural talent, often found themselves punished, demoted, or eliminated. Human pride and ego are delicate forces. Even small perceived slights can provoke disproportionate reactions. The lesson here is subtle but essential. Success is not just about skill, it is about perception. A subordinate may possess brilliance, but if that brilliance threatens the ego of a superior, it becomes dangerous. Greene illustrates this with historical examples, from courtiers in royal courts to ambitious advisors who misjudged their standing. Those who survive and thrive are those who make their superiors feel secure, appreciated, and even superior. Greene emphasizes that this law is not about dishonesty, it is about strategic humility. Displaying your abilities in ways that enhance rather than challenge those above you creates allies instead of enemies. A carefully measured display of competence combined with deference allows you to build influence subtly without provoking resentment. This law sets the tone for the rest of the book. Power is as much about psychology as it is about action. Understanding the emotions, insecurities, and perceptions of others is crucial. Those who fail to navigate these waters risk sabotage, envy, or direct confrontation. Those who master them gain freedom, protection, and opportunity. Law 2. Never put too much trust in friends. Learn how to use enemies. In the second law, Greene challenges a common assumption that friends are always trustworthy allies. While friendship may seem natural, history shows that friends can betray, envy, or exploit, often in subtle and unexpected ways. Familiarity breeds comfort, but also complacency. The closer someone is to us, the easier it is for resentment to grow unnoticed. Greene contrasts friends with enemies. Surprisingly, former enemies can be more reliable allies. When someone has been an adversary, their loyalty, once gained, is often stronger because it is earned and conscious rather than assumed. They respect power, boundaries, and the rules of engagement. In many cases, a former rival can become a strategic partner who is more dependable than a longtime friend. The law is not a call for cynicism, but for vigilance. Greene illustrates this with historical examples: leaders who trusted childhood friends only to be undermined, and rulers who harnessed former opponents to stabilize and strengthen their power. Success, he argues, requires careful evaluation of motives, not blind reliance on sentiment. The key takeaway is the importance of calculated relationships. Trust must be earned and tested. Blind loyalty is dangerous. Deliberate alliances are empowering. Greene emphasizes observation, patience, and strategic foresight as tools to navigate friendships and rivalries alike. Ultimately, this law underscores a central theme of the book. Power is not just about actions, it is about understanding human nature. Friendships, like any relationship, are part of a strategic landscape. Recognizing potential threats, managing expectations, and turning challenges into opportunities are essential skills for anyone seeking influence. Law 3. Conceal your intentions. In the third law, Greene delves into the art of strategic secrecy. One of the most powerful tools in gaining and maintaining influence is the ability to mask your true intentions. When others understand your goals too soon, they can interfere, resist, or sabotage your plans. Concealing your purpose keeps opponents off balance and creates opportunities for you to maneuver freely. Greene emphasizes that humans are naturally curious and suspicious. If your objectives are visible, people will analyze, predict, and counteract them. By contrast, when your intentions are hidden, you maintain an advantage. Ambiguity creates uncertainty, and uncertainty forces others to act defensively, often making mistakes in the process. This law does not advocate dishonesty for its own sake. It advocates strategic discretion. Successful individuals know how to communicate, mislead, or divert attention in ways that protect their objectives without appearing deceitful. A master of power cultivates a persona that distracts, charms, and manipulates perception, allowing their plans to unfold quietly and effectively. Historical examples abound: generals who feigned retreats to lure enemies, politicians who misled rivals about policy moves, and business leaders who masked acquisitions until the perfect moment. In each case, secrecy amplified influence, reduced risk, and maximized leverage. Bauman's insight into human psychology echoes here. People are quick to judge and slow to forgive. Concealing intentions prevents premature reactions, protects against envy, and ensures that your energy is focused on execution rather than conflict. Ultimately, this law teaches that power thrives on mystery. Transparency may feel virtuous, but in competitive environments, revealing too much too soon is a vulnerability. The wise observer, planner, and actor knows how to wield information and misinformation carefully, always keeping the upper hand. Law 4. Always say less than necessary. In the fourth law, Greene emphasizes the power of restraint in speech. Words, while necessary for communication, are also tools of vulnerability. The more you say, the more likely you are to reveal weaknesses, intentions, or gaps in knowledge. Excessive talking can give opponents ammunition, create misunderstandings, and dilute your influence. Greene illustrates this principle through historical examples. Leaders who spoke sparingly commanded respect, inspired curiosity, and maintained an aura of authority. Conversely, those who over-explained or boasted often exposed themselves to criticism, misinterpretation, or manipulation. Silence, he argues, communicates control, confidence, and mystery. The law is also deeply psychological. Humans instinctively seek meaning and patterns. When you say less, others project their assumptions, desires, or fears onto your words, or the lack thereof. This allows you to control perception without force. People tend to fill gaps in understanding, often in ways favorable to you, simply because you have not over-explained. Greene warns that verbosity is more than a social flaw, it is a strategic liability. Even in friendly or informal settings, the unnecessary disclosure of thoughts, intentions, or knowledge can erode your authority. Those who master brevity, on the other hand, project strength and discretion, making their presence more commanding. Ultimately, this law teaches that silence can be a weapon and words a liability. Speaking less does not mean being uncommunicative, it means being deliberate, precise, and intentional. In the pursuit of influence, knowing when to withhold information is as critical as knowing when to act. By mastering the art of restraint, you create space for intrigue, respect, and strategic advantage, making every word count and every silence meaningful. Law 5. So much depends on reputation. Guard it with your life. In the fifth law, Greene underscores the central role of reputation in the pursuit of power. Reputation is the lens through which others perceive you. It shapes trust, respect, and influence. A solid reputation can open doors, deflect attacks, and create opportunities, while a tarnished reputation can quickly erode authority, credibility, and safety. Greene explains that reputations are fragile and easily manipulated. Enemies and rivals are always looking for weaknesses to exploit, and even small missteps can be magnified into enduring stains. Therefore, protecting your reputation is not a vanity, it is a matter of survival and strategy. Historical examples abound. Kings who safeguarded their image through careful public appearances, generals who crafted heroic narratives to inspire loyalty, and leaders who neutralized detractors before rumors could spread. Greene emphasizes that proactive defense of your reputation is essential because reactive measures are often too late. The law also teaches the power of perception. Reputation is not only about reality, but about how others believe in your character and competence. Even unearned praise or false narratives can serve your interests if they reinforce a positive perception. Conversely, letting rumors, slights, or criticism fester can destabilize your influence. Greene encourages strategic reinforcement of reputation. Cultivate allies who will defend you, project consistency in behavior, and manage public perception carefully. By doing so, you not only protect yourself, but also establish a psychological advantage over rivals who may underestimate or misjudge you. Ultimately, this law reveals that power is as much about image as action. Guarding your reputation is not superficial. It is a tactical necessity that shapes your trajectory and safeguards your position.
Law 6. Court attention at all costs. In the sixth law, Greene emphasizes the strategic importance of visibility. In a world where power often hinges on perception, obscurity can be fatal. Those who remain unnoticed risk being overlooked, underestimated, or forgotten. Conversely, those who command attention, even controversy, gain influence, relevance, and leverage. Greene illustrates that attention is the currency of power. Historical figures who mastered the art of being noticed through charisma, spectacle, or bold action could dominate social and political landscapes. From rulers who staged public displays to captivate their subjects, to generals whose daring exploits inspired awe, attention amplifies authority and solidifies influence. However, Greene warns that attention must be managed carefully. It is not enough to be noticed, the type of attention matters. Positive perception enhances your power, while negative notoriety can undermine your position if it damages your credibility or alienates allies. The goal is to stand out without appearing weak, reckless, or unworthy. This law also plays on human psychology. People are naturally drawn to the extraordinary, the bold, and the intriguing. By crafting a persona that captures curiosity and admiration, you create an aura that others respond to instinctively. Even in professional or personal settings, visibility ensures that your ideas, actions, and presence are recognized and remembered. Ultimately, Greene emphasizes that invisibility is dangerous, attention is protective. To wield power effectively, one must cultivate presence, cultivate intrigue, and ensure that actions are noticed in ways that reinforce authority. Power grows when others are compelled to focus on you, whether through skill, audacity, or strategic flamboyance.
Law 7. Get others to do the work for you, but always take the credit. In the seventh law, Greene highlights a cornerstone of strategic power, leveraging the skills, knowledge, and efforts of others to advance your own position. Human labor and intellect are finite resources, and those who learn to harness them efficiently can multiply their influence dramatically. Greene emphasizes that it is not unethical to use others' contributions strategically. It is rather a recognition of the social and organizational realities of power. By delegating tasks, gathering expertise, and encouraging initiative, you free your own time and energy for higher-level strategy, while still ensuring that the outcome reflects positively on you. Historical examples abound. Great leaders and innovators often relied on the ingenuity of subordinates or collaborators, yet public perception credited the visionary figure with the success. Greene warns that failing to claim credit or doing all the work yourself can leave you vulnerable to being overshadowed or forgotten. However, the law is nuanced. Taking credit must be done subtly and diplomatically. The aim is not to humiliate or exploit, but to consolidate influence while keeping allies motivated. Those who feel recognized, even partially, are more likely to continue contributing, creating a self-sustaining cycle of productivity under your leadership. The psychological insight here is powerful. People are naturally motivated by acknowledgement, praise, and perceived success. By structuring interactions so that your authority and reputation benefit while others remain engaged and productive, you create a network of influence that extends beyond your individual efforts. Ultimately, this law teaches that power grows exponentially when you combine delegation, strategic credit, and recognition. Understanding how to navigate human ambition and psychology allows you to achieve far more than you could alone, while maintaining control and visibility. Law 8. Make other people come to you. Use bait if necessary. In the 8th law, Greene emphasizes the strategic advantage of positioning yourself as the focal point in interactions and negotiations. Instead of chasing opportunities, attention, or alliances, the most effective individuals create situations where others are drawn to them, giving them control over timing, terms, and perception. Greene explains that when you make others come to you, you shift the power dynamic in your favor. The person who pursues is often reacting, while the one who remains poised is directing. This allows you to observe, manipulate, and leverage the situation rather than being at the mercy of others' agendas. The use of bait is subtle. It could be an offer, an idea, or a strategic incentive that naturally attracts interest. By appealing to the desires, ambitions, or fears of others, you encourage them to approach you willingly, giving the appearance of cooperation while you maintain the upper hand. Historical examples include generals who lured opponents into traps, diplomats who invited negotiation on their terms, and business leaders who drew clients or partners through perceived opportunities. This law also works on a psychological level. People are naturally attracted to what they perceive as valuable, scarce, or desirable. By positioning yourself as a source of advantage, insight, or opportunity, you create magnetism that others cannot resist. Importantly, the law is not about deception alone. It is about structuring circumstances so that control naturally gravitates toward you. Greene cautions, however, that impatience or overeagerness can destroy this dynamic. If you appear desperate or too available, you surrender your leverage. Strategic patience, subtle influence, and calculated positioning are essential to drawing others into your sphere on your terms. Ultimately, this law reinforces a central theme of the book. Power is as much about perception and positioning as it is about action. By letting others come to you, you maintain control, preserve energy, and expand your influence without overt confrontation. Law 9. Win through your actions, never through argument. In this law, Greene delivers a lesson that cuts against one of our most common instincts, the urge to prove we are right through argument. Logic feels noble, clarity feels virtuous, and persuasion through words feels civilized. Yet power does not operate according to the rules of fairness or rational debate. It operates according to perception, emotion, and outcomes. Greene's central claim is stark. Arguments rarely change minds. When you argue, you awaken pride, defensiveness, and resentment in others. Even if your reasoning is flawless, the other person feels diminished, corrected, or exposed, and that emotional wound lingers far longer than the logic of your case. Winning an argument, often losing influence. History offers endless illustrations. Leaders who lectured, scolded, or reasoned with rivals often provoked rebellion rather than compliance. In contrast, those who demonstrated their point through decisive action, through success, results, or quiet effectiveness, silenced opposition without a single word. Action carries an authority that language cannot rival. Greene explains that actions bypass resistance. They speak directly to the senses and emotions. When people see something work, succeed, or dominate reality itself, doubt dissolves. There is nothing to debate. Reality has already cast its vote. This is why results intimidate more than rhetoric, and why visible success generates followers faster than explanation ever could. Another danger of argument is exposure. When you argue, you reveal your intentions, your strategy, and sometimes your insecurity. You give your opponent a map of your thinking. Action, on the other hand, preserves mystery. It keeps others guessing, adjusting, reacting, always one step behind. This law does not mean abandoning communication altogether. It means choosing demonstration over confrontation. Instead of telling someone they are wrong, let circumstances reveal it. Instead of defending your worth, let outcomes establish it. Instead of persuading with words, persuade with consequences. Greene also warns that arguments tend to escalate. What begins as a discussion can easily turn into a power struggle, where ego replaces truth as the primary motivator. In such moments, no one listens. Everyone prepares their counterattack. Power drains away in noise. Ultimately, this law teaches restraint. True power does not rush to explain itself. It allows others to discover its force indirectly. When you let your actions speak, you avoid unnecessary enemies, preserve your authority, and command respect without demanding it. In the world Greene describes, the strongest argument is success itself, silent, undeniable, and irreversible.
Law 10. Infection. Avoid the unhappy and unlucky. At first glance, this law may sound cold, even cruel, but Greene is not speaking in moral terms. He is speaking in psychological and social realities. Emotions, attitudes, and patterns of failure spread quietly like viruses. To ignore this is to misunderstand how human influence truly works. Greene argues that unhappiness is contagious. People who are chronically negative, bitter, or unlucky often carry an invisible gravity. They pull situations downward. Their problems multiply, not because fate targets them, but because their mindset shapes their decisions, reactions, and relationships. When you associate with them, you step into the field of that gravity. History and observation show that some individuals seem followed by misfortune wherever they go. Greene insists this is not superstition. These people tend to provoke hostility, misread social cues, resist learning, or sabotage opportunities unconsciously. They drain energy, distort judgment, and attract conflict. Standing too close means you become collateral damage. This law is not about abandoning compassion, it is about self-preservation. Greene distinguishes between those who suffer temporarily and those who live in a permanent state of complaint and defeat. The first can recover, the second will eventually pull you into their cycle. Power, Greene reminds us, requires clarity, confidence, and momentum. Constant exposure to negativity erodes all three. You begin to doubt your instincts, slow your progress, and absorb emotional burdens that are not yours to carry. Over time, this weakens your position and clouds your strategic thinking. Greene also flips the idea on its head. Just as misery spreads, success and optimism do too. People gravitate toward confidence, purpose, and forward motion.
Aligning yourself with those who are constructive, disciplined, and resilient amplifies your own power without effort. There is also a strategic dimension. Associating with the unlucky can damage your reputation. Power operates through perception, and people subconsciously judge you by the company you keep. Being surrounded by failure suggests poor judgment regardless of your personal abilities. The quiet warning of this law is simple but severe. You cannot save everyone, and trying to do so may cost you your future. Choose environments and relationships that reinforce strength, not decay. In Greene's world, survival depends not only on what you do, but on who you allow close enough to influence you. Law 11. Learn to keep people dependent on you. Power becomes fragile when it relies on force, threats, or constant persuasion. Greene argues that the most durable form of power is far quieter: dependency. When people need you, your skills, your judgment, your access, or your stability, they protect you instinctively. Your position becomes necessary rather than negotiable. Greene traces this law through courts, corporations, and political systems. Those who rose highest were not always the loudest or most dominant, but the ones who made themselves indispensable. They controlled key knowledge, managed crucial connections, or mastered rare abilities. Removing them would create chaos, so they were left untouched. The danger lies in doing the opposite, empowering others to the point where they no longer need you. Teaching everything you know, delegating all authority, or making yourself replaceable feels generous and modern, but in the arena of power, it is reckless. Independence liberates others, but it weakens your leverage. Greene emphasizes balance. Dependency must not feel like oppression. If people sense they are being trapped, resentment grows. The art is to offer value so consistently and uniquely that reliance feels natural, even comforting. You become a source of solutions, clarity, or opportunity, someone whose absence would be felt immediately. This law also explains why many fall after moments of success. They assume loyalty is permanent. They relax their strategic position. Slowly, others build alternatives, alliances, or replacements. When dependency disappears, so does protection. At a deeper level, Greene is describing how systems work. Institutions, relationships, and hierarchies stabilize around necessity. If you occupy a critical junction where information, resources, or decisions pass through, you gain power without demanding it. The lesson is not to dominate, but to matter, to be woven into the functioning of things so tightly that removing you feels like tearing a seam. True power does not shout its authority. It waits calmly, knowing others cannot move forward without it. Law 12. Use selective honesty and generosity to disarm your victim. Greene begins this law by unsettling a common assumption that honesty is always moral, neutral, and safe. In the world of power, honesty can be strategic. When used selectively, it lowers defenses faster than deception ever could. People expect manipulation to wear a mask. They brace themselves against flattery, exaggeration, and false promises. But when someone suddenly offers a moment of raw truth or unexpected generosity, suspicion collapses. The gesture feels human, sincere, and rare. That is precisely why it works. Greene explains that a single act of honesty can cover many later maneuvers. By admitting a small fault, acknowledging a weakness, or giving something of value without immediate return, you create emotional credit. Others begin to trust your intentions even when caution would be wiser. Generosity functions in the same way. A gift, a favor, or an unprompted kindness creates obligation. Humans are wired to reciprocate. Once this bond forms, resistance softens. People listen more closely, question less sharply, and assume good faith where none may exist. The danger, Greene warns, is overuse. Total transparency destroys mystery, and constant generosity breeds entitlement. The power of this law lies in rarity and timing. A well-placed truth is more persuasive than a stream of confessions. A calculated act of giving is stronger than habitual kindness. Historically, rulers and strategists understood this instinctively. They offered mercy at unexpected moments, confessed small errors publicly, or rewarded loyalty lavishly, only to secure deeper obedience later. The gesture felt noble, the effect was control. At its core, this law exploits a psychological shortcut. People confuse sincerity with harmlessness. They assume someone who appears open and generous cannot be dangerous. Greene shows how often history proves otherwise. This is not a call to cruelty, but to awareness. Honesty and generosity are powerful forces. Pretending they are neutral is naive. In the hands of the unskilled, they are virtues. In the hands of the strategic, they are tools. Power often advances not through force, but through trust, carefully earned and carefully spent. Law 13. When asking for help, appeal to people's self-interest, never to their mercy or gratitude. Greene dismantles the comforting belief that people help us because they are kind, loyal, or grateful. In reality, self-interest is the most reliable motivator. Gratitude fades, mercy hesitates, but benefit endures. When you appeal to someone's sense of kindness, you place them in a morally superior position. They may help, but reluctantly and often with resentment. When you remind them of past favors, you awaken discomfort rather than generosity. People dislike being indebted. They prefer to feel autonomous. Greene argues that the skilled strategist never begs, pleads, or moralizes. Instead, they frame every request in terms of advantage. What does the other person gain? Status, security, profit, influence, or relief from a problem? When the benefit is clear, assistance feels like a smart decision, not a sacrifice. History again provides the evidence. Alliances built on shared interest last far longer than those built on friendship or ideology. Rulers who relied on loyalty were betrayed. Those who aligned incentives were obeyed. This law also protects your dignity. Appealing to self-interest positions you as an equal negotiating party, not a dependent. It shifts the interaction from emotion to calculation, where outcomes are more predictable. Greene is not claiming that humans are incapable of generosity. He is saying that power should never rely on exceptions. If your success depends on goodwill alone, you are gambling. If it rests on benefit, you are building structure. At a deeper level, this law teaches emotional intelligence. Understanding what others want and speaking directly to that desire gives you leverage without conflict. You are not forcing cooperation, you are inviting it. Power, in this sense, is not about domination, it is about alignment. When others see your success as linked to their own, help arrives naturally. Law 14. Pose as a friend, work as a spy. Greene reveals a quiet truth about power. Information is the most valuable currency, and the easiest way to obtain it is through trust. People guard themselves against enemies, rivals, and authority, but they relax completely around friends. This law is not about espionage in the cinematic sense. It is about attentive presence. When you position yourself as a confidant, a listener, or a supportive ally, others expose far more than they intend. They reveal fears, ambitions, weaknesses, resentments, and plans, often without realizing it. Greene explains that direct questioning raises alarms. People sense interrogation and instinctively withhold. Friendship, on the other hand, lowers defenses. Casual conversation, shared experiences, and apparent empathy invite openness. Over time, patterns emerge. You begin to understand not only what people say, but why they say it. Historically, the most successful power players were excellent listeners. They spoke little, observed much, and remembered everything. Courts and organizations were navigated not through brute force, but through insight, knowing who wanted what, who feared whom, and where loyalties truly lay. This law also contains warning: never reveal as much as you receive. Mutual confession feels fair, but it erodes your advantage. The goal is asymmetry, knowing more than others know about you. Mystery preserves leverage. Greene emphasizes that this is not about betrayal for its own sake. Information allows anticipation. When you know others' intentions, you avoid surprises, neutralize threats early, and position yourself advantageously without open conflict. There's also a defensive side. Understanding this law protects you from manipulation. Awareness that friendliness can mask inquiry sharpens your judgment. You learn to distinguish genuine trust from strategic curiosity. At its core, this law teaches patience and observation. Power rarely comes from dramatic moves. It grows from quiet understanding, gathered over time through proximity rather than confrontation. Those who know the most often need to say the least. Law 15. Crush your enemy totally. Greene begins with a blunt observation. Mercy toward an enemy is often fatal. Allowing even a fragment of power to survive invites revenge, undermines authority, and signals weakness. History is filled with examples of rulers, generals, and strategists who spared adversaries only to see them regroup and strike back with greater force. The law is simple in principle, but ruthless in application. When you confront opposition, eliminate any chance of retaliation. This does not necessarily mean violence. It can mean cutting off resources, influence, or alliances that might allow an enemy to recover. Leaving a rival partially intact is leaving a seed for future conflict. Greene illustrates this with historical anecdotes. Conquerors who tolerated remnants of defeated armies faced prolonged insurgencies. Leaders who hesitated to neutralize opponents saw coups and betrayals. In contrast, those who acted decisively ensured stability and projected unchallengeable strength. This law also works psychologically. Seeing an enemy destroyed instills fear and respect among observers. It signals that challenges carry consequences, reducing the likelihood of future resistance. Half measures embolden others, but complete resolution reinforces authority. However, Greene cautions that timing, strategy, and perception matter. Brutality without rationale can provoke moral outrage or unite other enemies against you. The key is totality paired with justification. Actions must appear necessary, inevitable, and strategically sound. Beyond direct confrontation, the principle extends to subtler arenas. In business, leaving competitors a market segment to recover can allow them to come back stronger. In politics, tolerating influential opponents can destabilize your position. Greene urges foresight. Victory is fragile if your adversary remains capable and motivated. Ultimately, this law teaches that power is cumulative. Weakness in the moment invites danger in the future. Partial victory is often the prelude to complete defeat. Decisiveness, strategy, and uncompromising resolution define those who maintain dominance and those who falter. Law 16. Use absence to increase respect and honor. Greene opens this law by highlighting a paradox of human perception. Presence can dilute value, while absence enhances it. When someone is always visible, accessible, and abundant, their influence can wane. Scarcity, on the other hand, generates respect, anticipation, and perceived importance. This law operates on both psychological and strategic levels. Humans instinctively assign value to things that are rare. By creating periods of absence, physical, social, or symbolic, you increase your significance in the minds of others. Your presence becomes coveted, your words carry more weight, and your actions inspire greater attention. Greene draws examples from historical figures who mastered this principle. Rulers who retreated from public appearances to heighten mystique, advisors who made themselves selectively available, and artists who released work sparingly to maximize impact. Each leveraged absence to amplify respect and authority. The law also emphasizes timing and control. Absence must be deliberate, not accidental. If you vanish without purpose, people forget you or assume irrelevance. The art lies in withdrawing strategically, creating a sense of anticipation, and then returning when your presence has maximum effect. This principle extends beyond personal visibility. It applies to influence, communication, and initiative. By allowing your contributions to appear selectively, you magnify their perceived value. Overexposure can breed familiarity, complacency, or even contempt. Carefully measured absence maintains intrigue and dominance. Ultimately, Greene teaches that restraint and distance can be as powerful as action and presence. Power is not merely about engagement, it is about controlling perception. By making yourself scarce, you enhance the emotional and psychological weight of your existence in the lives of others, turning absence into an instrument of influence. Law 17. Keep others in suspended terror. Cultivate an air of unpredictability. In the 17th law, Greene explores the strategic power of unpredictability. Humans are hardwired to anticipate patterns. When these patterns are disrupted, anxiety and caution arise. By cultivating an element of surprise, unpredictability, and even calculated chaos, you keep others off balance, reactive rather than proactive. Greene emphasizes that predictability is vulnerability. When opponents can foresee your actions, they prepare countermeasures, neutralize your advantage, and diminish your authority. By contrast, unpredictability generates psychological leverage. People hesitate, second-guess themselves, and often make mistakes simply out of uncertainty. Historical figures mastered this principle in various forms. Leaders who changed routines, strategies, or alliances in unexpected ways kept rivals disoriented. Military commanders who employed deceptive maneuvers created fear and hesitation among enemies. Political operatives who shifted positions or tactics unpredictably maintained dominance and avoided entrapment. Psychologically, this law operates on fear and respect. Humans instinctively fear the unknown. By being unpredictable, you occupy a space of uncertainty that compels attention and caution. Allies and enemies alike tread carefully, granting you influence without direct confrontation. Greene warns, however, that unpredictability must be calculated. Randomness without purpose breeds chaos and mistrust. The key is to be strategically inconsistent in ways that serve your objectives, maintaining control while keeping others guessing. Ultimately, this law teaches that stability for others is an opportunity for you to wield influence. When you control the rhythm of interaction, the timing of decisions, and the pattern of engagement, you force others to adapt to your reality. Suspense, uncertainty, and surprise become your allies, turning psychological tension into a source of power. Law 18. Do not build fortresses to protect yourself. Isolation is dangerous. Greene opens this law with a striking observation. Seclusion weakens rather than protects. While it may feel safe to retreat from threats, the act of isolation diminishes information, awareness, and influence. Fortresses, literal or metaphorical, cut you off from the dynamics that sustain power, leaving you vulnerable to surprise attacks, miscalculations, and irrelevance. Power thrives on connection. By isolating yourself, you lose touch with allies, enemies, and the shifting landscape of opportunities and dangers. Greene illustrates this with historical examples. Leaders who retreated into protected compounds or secluded councils often found themselves outmaneuvered, betrayed, or ignored. Their safety came at the cost of knowledge and control. The law is also psychological. Isolation fosters fear, paranoia, and overconfidence. Without feedback from the outside world, misjudgments grow unchecked. Decisions become insulated from reality, making even small errors potentially catastrophic. Conversely, remaining engaged provides perspective, intelligence, and the ability to influence outcomes before they spiral beyond control. Greene emphasizes that protection is not about walls, it is about visibility, alliances, and strategic positioning. By staying connected, you anticipate threats, manage perception, and maintain influence over people and events. The fortress may feel secure, but the web of influence is what truly shields power. In practical terms, this law advises maintaining networks, cultivating informants, and being present in critical arenas. Retreat may be necessary at times, but permanent withdrawal is a liability. Fortresses isolate the mind as well as the body, creating blind spots that enemies exploit. Ultimately, Greene teaches that power is relational, not structural. Safety does not lie in distance or barriers, but in engagement, awareness, and strategic relationships. Isolation may provide temporary relief, but it erodes the foundation on which lasting influence stands. Law 19. Know who you're dealing with. Do not offend the wrong person. Greene opens this law with a cautionary note. Misjudging people is a fatal error. Power is not only about your actions, but also about understanding the temperament, history, and motivations of those around you. Offending the wrong individual, whether through arrogance, miscalculation, or ignorance, can provoke retaliation far beyond what you anticipated. Humans are deeply influenced by pride, ego, and past experiences. Some are forgiving, some vindicating, and some deceptively patient. Greene emphasizes that failure to identify these traits leaves you vulnerable. Historical examples abound. Leaders and generals underestimated their adversaries, treating dangerous individuals as harmless, only to face catastrophic consequences. This law stresses observation and intelligence gathering. Study people before acting. Assess their patience, pride, connections, and capacity for revenge. Understanding these elements allows you to navigate interactions carefully, avoiding unnecessary offense, preserving your position while targeting the right person at the right time can accelerate your goals. Ultimately, this law teaches that strategic awareness of individuals is as crucial as any tactical maneuver. Power is relational, and missteps often stem not from boldness, but from ignorance of human nature. The more you understand who you are dealing with, the safer and more effective your moves become. Law 20. Do not commit to anyone. It is the ultimate form of independence. Greene begins this law by emphasizing a counterintuitive truth. Total independence is one of the strongest positions in the realm of power. Commitment, loyalty, and alignment with others can feel noble or safe, but they often limit freedom, constrain strategy, and expose you to manipulation. By remaining unattached, you maintain flexibility. You are not bound by the ambitions, failures, or agendas of others. Your decisions are dictated by opportunity and self-interest, not by obligation. Greene illustrates this with examples from history. Political figures who allied too closely with powerful patrons or factions often found themselves trapped, compromised, or betrayed when fortunes shifted. The law is not about isolation, it is about strategic neutrality. By keeping options open, you preserve leverage. People cannot control or predict you if you refuse to be captured by alliances or commitments. This autonomy transforms you into a wild card, respected, cautious, and difficult to manipulate. Greene also highlights the psychological effect of independence. Others naturally perceive uncommitted individuals as self-reliant, confident, and mysterious. This perception fosters respect and subtly shifts influence in your favor, as people defer to or accommodate someone who is untethered. Yet the law requires subtlety. Complete detachment without discretion can appear aloof or untrustworthy. The goal is selective engagement. Participate, collaborate, or form alliances when beneficial, but never surrender your freedom. Independence allows you to negotiate from a position of strength, maintain dignity, and adapt quickly to changing circumstances. Ultimately, Greene teaches that the greatest power comes from mobility, choice, and self-reliance. By refusing permanent commitment, you remain unpredictable, unbound, and resilient, a master of circumstances rather than a servant to them. Law 21. Play a sucker to catch a sucker. Seem dumber than your mark. Greene introduces this law with a sharp psychological insight. People relax when they feel superior. The moment someone believes they are smarter, more capable, or aware than you, their guard drops. Ego takes control, caution fades, and mistakes follow. Appearing less intelligent than those around you can therefore become a powerful strategic advantage. This law does not celebrate ignorance, it celebrates concealment. By downplaying your intelligence, insight, or ambition, you allow others to underestimate you. They speak more freely, reveal intentions, and expose weaknesses. Meanwhile, you observe, calculate, and prepare. Greene shows how many historical figures used this tactic to survive and rise. Advisors pretended naivete to avoid suspicion. Political players allowed rivals to believe they were harmless only to outmaneuver them later. Even in everyday power dynamics, those who flaunt intelligence often provoke envy and resistance, while those who mask it move freely. The psychological mechanism is simple. People dislike feeling inferior. When confronted with someone visibly smarter, they become defensive or hostile. But when they feel superior, they become careless. By letting others feel clever, you gain access to information, trust, and opportunity. Greene also warns against the opposite mistake. Showing how sharp you are may win admiration briefly, but it often breeds resentment in the long run. Power prefers invisibility to applause. This law requires discipline. You must resist the temptation to correct, impress, or dominate intellectually. Silence, simplicity, and restraint become tools. Your apparent modesty is not weakness, it is camouflage. At its core, this law teaches that true intelligence knows when not to appear intelligent. By allowing others to underestimate you, you gain room to maneuver, freedom to observe, and the decisive advantage of surprise. Law 22. Use the surrender tactic. Transform weakness into power. Greene begins this law by challenging a deeply ingrained instinct, the urge to resist at all costs. In many situations, struggle hardens your opponent's resolve, escalates conflict, and exposes your vulnerabilities. Surrender, when chosen deliberately, can do the opposite. It disarms, confuses, and ultimately reverses the balance of power. This law is rooted in psychological judo. When you resist, you give your opponent a clear target. When you surrender, you remove that target entirely. The aggressor suddenly loses momentum. Their sense of superiority dulls, overconfidence creeps in. This is the moment when power quietly shifts. Greene is careful to define surrender correctly. It is not defeat, submission of will, or permanent loss. It is a tactical retreat, a conscious decision to bend rather than break. By yielding in the short term, you gain time, insight, and strategic flexibility. You live to reposition yourself while the other side believes the conflict is over. History repeatedly confirms this pattern. Armies that retreated strategically survived to win later wars. Political figures who accepted temporary humiliation avoided destruction and returned stronger. Those who stubbornly resisted overwhelming force were crushed completely. Surrender also has a moral camouflage. It appears humble, reasonable, even virtuous. This lowers hostility and suspicion. Your opponent may relax vigilance, loosen control, or grant concessions, believing dominance is secured. In reality, they have given you space to recover and plan. Greene emphasizes timing above all. Surrender too early and you appear weak, too late and the damage is irreversible. The skilled strategist senses when resistance no longer serves purpose and converts apparent weakness into leverage. There is also an internal dimension to this law. Letting go of pride is essential. Ego demands confrontation. Strategy demands survival. Those who cannot surrender when necessary sacrifice long-term power for short-term self-image. Ultimately, this law teaches a quiet truth. Power is not always about standing tall. Sometimes it is about kneeling briefly so you can stand unchallenged later. Law 23. Concentrate your forces. Greene frames this law around a simple but unforgiving reality. Power dissipates when it is spread too thin. Effort scattered across too many fronts produces noise, not impact. Strength, to be effective, must be focused, channeled into a decisive point where it can overwhelm resistance. History favors those who understood this principle. Empires rose by concentrating military force at strategic locations. Financiers dominated markets by focusing capital where returns were highest. Political leaders secured authority by consolidating influence rather than chasing popularity everywhere. In each case, success came not from doing more, but from doing less with greater intensity. Greene warns against the temptation of diversification for its own sake. While spreading resources may feel safe, it often weakens your position. You become busy instead of powerful. Opponents who focus their energy on a single objective can outmaneuver you with ease. This law also applies internally. Mental energy, attention, and ambition are finite. When you chase too many goals, none receive the force required to succeed. Concentration sharpens judgment, accelerates progress, and magnifies results. It turns effort into momentum. Greene illustrates how powerful figures often built dominance around a single pillar, one key alliance, one defining strength, one core reputation. From that foundation, expansion became possible. Without it, everything collapsed. There is also a psychological advantage. Concentrated force intimidates. When others see relentless focus aimed in one direction, they perceive inevitability. Resistance weakens not because of brute strength, but because of clarity and persistence. Ultimately, this law teaches discipline. Power is not about limitless action, it is about selective intensity. By identifying what truly matters and directing your full force toward it, you transform limited resources into decisive influence. Law 24. Play the perfect courtier. Greene opens this law by observing that social mastery is as crucial to power as strategic brilliance. Being talented or intelligent is insufficient if you cannot navigate the complex web of influence, etiquette, and perception that surrounds authority. The perfect courtier is someone who blends charm, tact, and subtlety to thrive within hierarchies without provoking envy or resistance. The essence of this law lies in adaptability. A courtier observes power dynamics, understands the desires and insecurities of those above, and adjusts behavior accordingly. Flattery is artful, not obsequious. Loyalty is genuine enough to be believable, yet calculated enough to protect independence. Timing is everything. A word spoken too soon or too late can undermine months of careful positioning. Greene points out that history offers numerous examples. Ministers, advisors, and confidants who mastered the art of social intelligence influenced decisions far beyond their official authority. They wielded power invisibly, often shaping policy and outcomes through persuasion and discretion rather than force. The law also teaches the importance of restraint. Open ambition, brashness, or impatience threatens allies and superiors alike. The perfect courtier conceals desire for advancement while subtly creating conditions that allow influence to grow. By remaining indispensable yet unobtrusive, they maintain safety, respect, and authority simultaneously. Psychologically, Greene emphasizes that humans respond strongly to validation, attention, and the skillful reflection of their own importance. The courtier's role is to recognize these needs and provide them without overstepping boundaries. Success depends on empathy calibrated with calculation. Ultimately, Greene illustrates that the mastery of social environments transforms individuals from mere participants into architects of power. The perfect courtier is not merely a servant, they are a strategist in plain sight, turning observation, tact, and subtle influence into lasting authority. Law 25. Recreate yourself. Greene begins this law by asserting a fundamental truth. Stagnation is the enemy of power. People who remain fixed in identity, habits, or reputation are predictable and vulnerable. True power, he argues, comes from the ability to reinvent oneself, adapting to changing circumstances, expectations, and opportunities. Recreation is not superficial. It is about transforming how others perceive you, cultivating new skills, and presenting yourself as a dynamic force. Greene emphasizes that identity is largely a social construct. By shaping the image others hold of you, you influence their behavior, expectations, and reactions. Strategic self-fashioning allows you to command attention, respect, and authority. Historical figures exemplify this principle. Leaders who shifted public persona to align with emerging power structures, artists who continuously evolved their craft, and innovators who redefined industries all leveraged reinvention. Their adaptability kept them relevant and influential, while those who clung to old identities faded into obscurity. Greene also stresses the psychological aspect. Reinvention requires confidence and courage. It challenges assumptions, disrupts comfort zones, and risks failure. Yet the calculated presentation of new qualities or roles can reset relationships, alliances, and hierarchies to your advantage. Critically, recreation must be deliberate. Random change breeds suspicion or confusion. Each transformation should enhance your perceived power, appeal, and indispensability. This law is about curated evolution, where every new persona serves strategic objectives and increases leverage. At its core, Greene teaches that power is dynamic. To remain influential, you must continuously adapt, surprise, and reimagine yourself. Those who refuse to evolve surrender relevance. Those who master reinvention shape reality itself. Law 26. Keep your hands clean. Greene opens this law by confronting a harsh reality of power. Those in control are judged by results, not methods. To maintain influence, one must appear virtuous and untouchable while allowing others to execute unpleasant or morally dubious tasks. Direct involvement in dirty work tarnishes reputation, weakens authority, and invites scrutiny. The law is about strategic delegation. By having intermediaries carry out controversial actions, you remain above reproach. Historical examples abound. Leaders who manipulated conflicts, enforced unpopular policies, or removed rivals often relied on subordinates to act as instruments, preserving the facade of legitimacy and honor. Greene emphasizes the importance of perception. Even if morally justified, visible involvement in conflict or controversy diminishes influence. Power relies not just on action, but on the belief others hold about your character. Appearing unblemished while guiding events from behind the scenes strengthens authority. Psychologically, this law exploits human tendencies toward envy, moral judgment, and admiration. Those who see you as untouchable, elegant, and restrained are more likely to trust, respect, and follow. Conversely, exposure to scandal or wrongdoing, even minor, erodes power rapidly. Greene also warns that maintaining cleanliness requires vigilance. Associates can act unpredictably, mistakes happen, and perception can shift. Mastery involves careful selection of agents, clear instructions, and subtle oversight to ensure your reputation remains pristine. At its core, this law teaches a critical principle of power. It is not enough to be effective, you must also appear impeccable. Influence is as much about the image you project as the outcomes you achieve. By keeping your hands clean, you combine effectiveness with invulnerability, creating a lasting and respected authority. Law 27. Play on people's need to believe. Create a cult-like following. This law exposes a persistent feature of human psychology. People crave meaning, certainty, and belonging, especially in times of confusion. When traditional structures weaken, religion, community, authority, many feel unmoored. Into that vacuum steps the figure who offers clarity, purpose, and a story that explains the world simply. Power follows belief. Greene is not speaking only about literal cults. He is describing a broader mechanism that operates in politics, business, movements, and personal influence. Wherever people feel lost or dissatisfied, they are primed to believe if someone speaks with conviction and offers a sense of direction. The formula is deceptively simple. First, present a bold, emotionally resonant idea. It does not need to be complex or even fully logical. In fact, simplicity is an advantage. Clear enemies, clear promises, clear identity. Second, embody certainty. Doubt repels followers. Confidence, especially calm, unwavering confidence, attracts them. Third, create rituals, symbols, or shared language that bind individuals into a group. Belief deepens through participation. Greene emphasizes that emotion always precedes reason. People rationalize what they already feel. A leader who understands this does not argue endlessly. They dramatize, repeat, and reinforce. Repetition turns ideas into truth. Shared emotion turns belief into loyalty. There is also a crucial social dimension. Once people publicly commit by wearing symbols, repeating slogans, or defending the group, they become invested. To leave would mean admitting error, losing identity, or facing exclusion. The belief system sustains itself, often without further effort from the leader. Greene warns that skepticism is the natural enemy of this law. Too much explanation, transparency, or nuance weakens the spell. Mystery strengthens it. Distance elevates authority. The leader must appear slightly unreachable, operating on a higher plane of understanding. At the same time, Greene includes a caution. Cult-like power is volatile. It can grow rapidly, but it depends entirely on the leader's ability to maintain belief. Scandal, inconsistency, or exposure can trigger sudden collapse. Those who build power purely on belief must constantly tend the illusion. Ultimately, Law 27 is not an endorsement of manipulation for its own sake. It is a diagnosis of how belief operates in human systems. To understand it is to recognize when others are trying to harness your need to believe, and to understand how devotion, once formed, can override reason, morality, and even self-interest. Belief binds more tightly than force, and those who command belief rarely need to command anything else. Law 28. Enter action with boldness. Greene argues that hesitation is far more dangerous than mistakes. When you act timidly, you invite doubt, resistance, and challenge. Boldness, by contrast, projects confidence and creates its own authority. People tend to follow certainty, even when it is flawed, more readily than cautious intelligence. This law rests on a psychological truth. Humans are deeply influenced by appearances. A bold action feels deliberate, inevitable, and powerful. It overwhelms opposition before it has time to organize. Timid actions, however well-reasoned, signal uncertainty and encourage others to test your limits. Greene shows how history repeatedly favors the audacious. Conquerors who moved decisively shocked enemies into submission. Political leaders who acted with confidence shaped reality faster than critics could respond. In contrast, those who waited for perfect conditions often lost their moment entirely. Boldness also creates momentum. Once you act decisively, events begin to align around your movement. Allies gain confidence, opponents grow cautious, and ambiguity dissolves. Even errors are forgiven more easily when they come wrapped in confidence rather than fear. This law does not reject strategy or intelligence. Greene is clear: boldness must rest on calculation, not recklessness. But once the decision is made, execution must be decisive and unapologetic. Half measures undermine authority. Full commitment commands respect. There is also a self-reinforcing effect. Acting boldly strengthens your own psychological state. Confidence grows through action, not contemplation. Each decisive move makes the next one easier. Ultimately, Greene teaches that power rewards those who step forward without flinching. The world resists uncertainty, but it yields, often surprisingly quickly, to confident force. Law 29. Plan all the way to the end. Power, Greene warns, is often lost not through poor beginnings, but through short-sighted endings. Many people act brilliantly in the opening move, only to stumble because they never thought beyond the immediate win. This law insists on a longer gaze, one that follows actions to their furthest consequences. Human nature favors the present. We crave quick victories, visible rewards, and applause that arrives now, not later. Greene treats this instinct as dangerous. Every action triggers a chain of reactions, counter-reactions, and delayed effects. To stop thinking midway is to surrender control to chance. Strategic thinkers, by contrast, imagine the end before they act. They visualize resistance, fatigue, betrayal, boredom, and shifting alliances. This mental rehearsal does not paralyze them, it sharpens their moves. When surprises come, and they always do, they are already expected. Greene draws heavily on historical failures caused by premature triumph. Leaders who celebrated too early relaxed vigilance. Reformers who won initial support ignored how power structures would regroup. Conquerors who expanded rapidly failed to consider how territory would be governed, defended, and sustained. The fall was not sudden, it was baked into the plan from the start. Planning to the end also protects against emotional decision-making. When anger, pride, or excitement dominate, foresight collapses. This law acts as a corrective. Slow down, project forward, and ask not what do I gain now, but where does this force me to go next? Importantly, Greene does not advocate rigidity. Planning is not predicting the future with certainty, it is preparing for variability. The strategist anticipates multiple endings and preserves flexibility. What matters is not knowing exactly how things will unfold, but ensuring that no outcome leaves you cornered. Power favors those who remain architects rather than improvisers. When you plan to the end, you keep initiative in your hands while others react. Law 30. Make your accomplishments seem effortless. Power, in Greene's view, is theatrical, whether we admit it or not. People do not merely judge outcomes, they judge how those outcomes appear. This law reveals a counterintuitive truth. Effort, when displayed openly, diminishes authority. Human psychology equates ease with superiority. What looks natural, smooth, and unstrained feels closer to genius than labor ever could. When someone struggles publicly, explaining every step, advertising every hardship, showing how hard they worked, they invite comparison. And comparison erodes mystique. Greene does not deny effort. On the contrary, he assumes immense preparation. What he condemns is visible effort. Masters rehearse endlessly so that performance looks spontaneous. Strategists plan obsessively so that execution feels inevitable. Power is enhanced when others cannot see the machinery behind the result. History offers endless examples. Magicians hide technique to preserve wonder. Rulers conceal advisors to appear decisive. Artists destroy drafts so the final work seems born whole. In each case, concealment is not deception, it is authority management. Revealing struggle also invites interference. When people see how something is done, they believe they can do it too, improve it, or challenge it. Mystery, by contrast, creates distance, and distance protects power. There is another danger Greene highlights. Visible effort looks repeatable. If people think your achievements required only steps and discipline, they may attempt to replicate them, or worse, believe they deserve the same rewards. Effortless success suggests rarity, not fairness. This law also warns against complaining. Publicly narrating exhaustion, sacrifice, or frustration turns strength into fragility. Power does not need sympathy, it needs confidence projected outward. In essence, Greene urges a separation between work and display. Labor in private, present polish in public. Let results speak while methods remain unseen. Law 31. Control the options. Get others to play with the cards you deal. This law is one of Greene's quiet masterpieces because it reveals how power works best when it doesn't look like power at all. The most effective control is not coercion, threat, or command. It is choice architecture. You let people feel free, while every available option leads where you want. Human beings resist orders, but they embrace decisions. When people believe they are choosing, their guard drops. Greene exploits this deeply human weakness. We mistake autonomy of selection for autonomy of outcome. The technique is simple in concept and subtle in execution. You present several alternatives, all of which serve your interests. One option may be clearly inferior, another risky, a third comfortable, but every path keeps control in your hands. The target debates internally, never realizing the real decision was removed long before. History shows this method everywhere. Diplomats offer compromises that benefit only one side. Employers present career paths that differ in prestige but not in dependence. Rulers allow elections between candidates who all protect the same system. Freedom of choice becomes a beautifully decorated cage. Greene emphasizes that the illusion must be convincing. If manipulation is visible, resentment follows. The options must appear balanced, even generous. Sometimes you include a decoy choice, an extreme or unpleasant alternative, so the desired one feels reasonable by comparison. This exploits our tendency toward relative judgment, not absolute reasoning. Another variation is narrowing options gradually. Instead of denying possibilities outright, you let them fade. Doors quietly close while one corridor remains brightly lit. By the time resistance awakens, momentum has already chosen. This law also applies internally. Powerful people avoid being trapped by others' options. They recognize when choices are artificial and refuse the premise itself. True autonomy begins with questioning who designed the menu. At its core, Law 31 teaches that power is not about forcing behavior, it is about structuring reality so that behavior aligns naturally with your goals. Law 32. Play to people's fantasies. Facts persuade the mind. Fantasies move the heart. And the heart, inconveniently for rationalists, usually wins. Greene places this law where he does for a reason. Once you control the options, the next step is controlling desire itself. People do not live on reality alone. They endure reality. What they crave, often desperately, is escape from limitation, mediocrity, fear, boredom, and insignificance. Power understands this and never speaks in the cold language of what is. It speaks in the warmer, more intoxicating language of what could be. Greene observes that most failures of persuasion come from telling people uncomfortable truths. The powerful do the opposite. They offer visions, vague, glowing, emotionally charged visions that allow people to project their own hopes onto them. Precision weakens fantasy, ambiguity strengthens it. The less defined the promise, the more irresistible it becomes. This is why demagogues thrive, why cult leaders flourish, why certain brands command loyalty bordering on devotion. They don't sell products, policies, or programs. They sell identity, destiny, and belonging. They hint at transformation without explaining the cost. The fantasy need not be grand. Sometimes it's the promise of being special, chosen, or ahead of the curve. Sometimes it's nostalgia, an imagined past that never truly existed. Sometimes it's moral superiority, the fantasy of being on the right side of history without having to do the hard work history demands. Greene warns that reality eventually intrudes. Fantasies decay. When they do, the fallout can be violent. That is why the skilled player constantly refreshes the illusion, new symbols, new enemies, new narratives, before disappointment crystallizes into anger. There is a defensive lesson here too. Powerless people are often victims not because they lack intelligence, but because they are exhausted. Fantasies offer rest. To resist manipulation, one must develop the rare discipline of asking, what discomfort is this promise trying to anesthetize? Law 32 teaches a harsh but accurate truth. People do not follow leaders who describe the world accurately. They follow those who make the world feel meaningful. Law 33. Discover each man's thumbscrew. If Law 32 is about mass illusion, Law 33 is about intimate precision. This is where power stops shouting to crowds and starts whispering into individual nerves. A thumbscrew, in Greene's language, is a hidden pressure point. Everyone has one. Pride, insecurity, guilt, fear, vanity, ambition, resentment. Some quiet psychological lever that, when pressed, makes a person predictable. The central claim of this law is unsettling but empirically solid. People are less driven by logic than by unresolved inner tensions. Greene argues that most people do not truly know why they act. They narrate their behavior in noble terms, principles, values, reason, while being steered by forces they barely recognize. Power observes rather than moralizes. It listens longer than it speaks. It notices patterns, what angers someone disproportionately, what flatters them too easily, what they defend too quickly. The skilled operator never assumes, they watch. How does this person respond to praise, to disrespect, to uncertainty? Who do they envy? What do they fear losing more than anything else? Status, security, control, love. Once the thumbscrew is identified, influence becomes efficient. You no longer need threats when fear does the work for you. You no longer need rewards when validation is enough. You don't argue, you activate. Greene is careful to note that thumbscrews are rarely obvious. The loudest bravado often hides the deepest insecurity. Excessive moralism can conceal secret guilt. Extreme independence may mask a terror of abandonment. The surface behavior is camouflage, the real leverage lies beneath. This law explains why some people are impossible to persuade through reason alone. Reason speaks to the conscious mind. Thumbscrews control the subconscious. When the two conflict, the subconscious wins without apology. There is also a mirror here, and it is uncomfortable. To read this law honestly is to realize that you too have thumbscrews. Knowing them does not make you immune, but it gives you friction, just enough resistance to slow manipulation before it becomes obedience. Greene's warning is sharp. Those who fail to understand others' weaknesses will eventually be ruled by their own. Power is rarely seized through strength alone. More often, it is borrowed from the unattended vulnerabilities of others. Law 34. Be royal in your own fashion. Act like a king to be treated like one. After the surgical psychology of Law 33, Greene pivots to something quieter but no less dangerous, self-perception as a political act. This law argues that power does not begin with authority, titles, or permission. It begins with how you carry yourself when none of those things are guaranteed. People take their cues from signals, not facts. Status is rarely verified, it is assumed. When you treat yourself as someone of consequence, calm, unhurried, unneedy, others unconsciously adjust their behavior to match your frame. Not because they have examined the evidence, but because humans are exquisitely sensitive to confidence cues. We mirror certainty. We recoil from self-doubt. Greene's insight here is almost anthropological. Royalty, historically, did not rule because they were superior. They ruled because they performed superiority relentlessly. Ritual, distance, restraint, dignity, these were not aesthetic choices, but technologies of belief. The crown mattered less than the composure beneath it. To be royal in your own fashion does not mean arrogance. Arrogance is loud insecurity. Royalty is quiet expectation. The king does not beg to be respected. He behaves as though respect is already the natural order of things. This law warns against the subtle self-sabotage of over-explaining, apologizing unnecessarily, chasing validation, or reacting emotionally to slights. These behaviors advertise doubt. They tell the room, "I am not sure of my place, please decide it for me." And the room will decide, often harshly. Greene emphasizes restraint. Speak less than expected. Move slower than the anxious. Choose your words with economy. Scarcity creates gravity. When you do not rush to prove yourself, others start doing the proofing for you. There is also a paradox here. Acting royal often creates the reality it assumes. Confidence attracts opportunity, and opportunity retroactively justifies confidence. The performance becomes truth through repetition. But Greene adds a crucial caveat. False royalty collapses under pressure. If the performance is not anchored in discipline, competence, and self-command, it will crack. This law is not about pretending to be important. It is about training yourself to believe that your presence matters and then behaving consistently with that belief. In essence, Law 34 teaches that you are always signaling your value, even in silence. The question is whether you are signaling scarcity or sovereignty. Law 35. Master the art of timing. Power is rarely defeated by force alone. More often, it is undone by impatience. This law explores a truth that feels simple, but is brutally difficult to practice. Knowing when to act matters more than knowing how. Greene treats timing as an invisible weapon. Two people can make the same move using the same strategy with opposite results, purely because one moved too early or too late. History, politics, business, and personal relationships are littered with failures not of intelligence, but of misjudged moments. Impatience, Greene argues, is the most common enemy of power. It pushes people to reveal their intentions too soon, to strike before conditions are ripe, to speak when silence would have done more damage. The impatient person believes action creates control. The powerful person knows waiting often creates it instead. Timing requires emotional discipline. You must resist the urge to respond immediately to provocation, opportunity, or fear. Most people act to relieve inner tension, not because the moment is right. This is why baiting works. When someone provokes you, they're often trying to force you into a poorly timed reaction. If you respond on their schedule, you are already losing. Greene points out that power favors those who can read cycles, rise and decline, enthusiasm and fatigue, chaos and stability. Every situation has a natural arc. Push against it and you exhaust yourself. Align with it and effort feels minimal while impact feels enormous. There is also a strategic cruelty in patience. When you wait while others rush, they expose weaknesses, they commit errors publicly, they overextend. Time becomes an ally that quietly erodes your opponents while strengthening your position. But this law is not about endless delay. Hesitation is just another form of fear. The art lies in knowing the precise moment when waiting becomes waste. When conditions align, when resistance weakens, when attention peaks, when momentum shifts, you must move decisively and without hesitation. Timing rewards the prepared, not the passive. Greene also emphasizes personal timing. Not every phase of life is meant for the same battles. There are seasons for learning, for observing, for building quietly, and for striking boldly. Power grows when you respect the phase you are in instead of resenting it. In short, Law 35 teaches that time is not something to fight or ignore. It is something to study, ride, and occasionally weaponize. Those who master timing appear lucky. In reality, they are simply patient while others are frantic and decisive when others freeze.
Law 36. Disdain things you cannot have. Ignoring them is the best revenge. This law cuts against instinct. When denied something, status, attention, love, recognition, most people lean forward. They fixate. They explain, justify, chase, resent. Greene's claim is colder and more unsettling. The moment you obsess over what you cannot have, you give it power over you. Power thrives on attention. When you react emotionally to an insult, a rival, or a closed door, you confirm its importance. You announce, without words, that it has wounded you. And wounds invite pressure. This is why provocations work. They are not designed to defeat you directly, but to pull you into a psychological trap where you do the damage yourself. Greene draws heavily from court politics and human psychology here. In hierarchical systems, nothing elevates a lesser enemy faster than visible outrage. To be ignored is humiliating. To be obsessed over is flattering.
When you respond intensely to something that withholds itself from you, you invert the power dynamic. You chase, it controls. Disdain, by contrast, is strategic indifference. It is not denial or repression. It is a deliberate refusal to invest emotional energy. When you act as though something does not matter, others begin to question whether it ever did. Ignoring a provocation often unsettles the provocateur more than retaliation because it denies them the reaction they seek. There is also a deeper lesson here about desire. Many conflicts persist not because the object is valuable, but because frustration amplifies longing. Scarcity distorts perception. The forbidden begins to glow. Greene urges distance as a corrective lens. Step back and the illusion weakens. What once felt essential often shrinks to something ordinary or irrelevant. This law does not suggest passivity in the face of injustice or genuine loss. It targets petty slights, ego wounds, and symbolic victories, the kinds of battles that drain focus without improving position. Power grows when attention is conserved and deployed selectively, not scattered reactively. Greene also notes that disdain must be believable. Performative indifference is transparent and fragile. True disdain comes from having alternatives, from building a life, identity, or strategy so rich that one closed door barely registers. Abundance makes ignoring easier. Dependence makes it impossible. In essence, Law 36 teaches that not every denial deserves a response. Some battles are won the moment you refuse to fight them. By withdrawing attention, you starve what seeks to control you and reclaim your own center of gravity. Law 37. Create compelling spectacles. Human beings are not governed by reason alone. We are visual, emotional, symbolic creatures. Abstract arguments fade quickly. Images, rituals, and dramatic moments lodge themselves in memory. This law explores how those who command attention through spectacle gain influence far beyond their actual strength. Greene's premise is blunt. People see first, think later, if they think at all. A well-crafted spectacle bypasses skepticism and speaks directly to emotion. It simplifies complexity into something instantly graspable. That simplicity is not accidental, it is engineered. Historically, power has always understood this. Monarchs staged grand ceremonies, religions built cathedrals, revolutions unfurled flags, slogans, and mass rallies. These were not decorations, they were psychological tools designed to create awe, unity, fear, or legitimacy. The spectacle tells people not what to think, but how to feel, and feelings are far easier to direct than thoughts. Greene warns that the opposite of spectacle is invisibility. No matter how competent or intelligent you are, if your actions are quiet, technical, or emotionally flat, they will be overlooked. The world rewards not just results, but the perception of significance. Spectacle magnifies presence. It turns ordinary actions into events. But this law is not an invitation to cheap theatrics. Empty spectacle collapses quickly. The most effective spectacles are anchored to meaning, symbols that resonate with shared values, fears, or aspirations. A gesture, a setting, a moment carefully framed can communicate authority more powerfully than 1,000 explanations. Greene also emphasizes contrast. Spectacle works because it breaks routine, it surprises, it interrupts the expected flow of events. When everyone is predictable, the unexpected becomes magnetic. When everything is noisy, silence, used deliberately, can itself become a spectacle. There is danger here. Spectacles attract scrutiny. They raise expectations. If you cannot sustain the image you project, the collapse will be just as dramatic as the rise. This is why Greene repeatedly stresses control. Never stage what you cannot manage. In modern life, spectacle is no longer confined to palaces and plazas. Media, screens, branding, and personal narratives have turned everyday spaces into stages. Those who understand this shape perception. Those who ignore it are shaped by it. Law 37 teaches that power does not merely act, it performs. And in a world saturated with information, the ability to craft a moment that people remember may matter more than the substance behind it.
Law 38. Think as you like, but behave like others. This law addresses a subtle but recurring trap, the belief that originality must be visible in order to matter. Greene dismantles that idea with surgical calm. True independence of thought, he suggests, survives best when it is strategically concealed. Human groups enforce norms instinctively. Customs, habits, beliefs, these are not just social preferences, but psychological glue. Anyone who openly violates them risks triggering discomfort, envy, or hostility. Not because others are malicious, but because difference threatens the shared sense of order. When you act too unlike the group, you become a mirror that reflects their own limitations back at them. People rarely forgive that. Greene's warning is clear. Never advertise your superiority, skepticism, or unconventional thinking prematurely. Doing so invites resistance long before you have the power to withstand it. History is full of brilliant outsiders crushed not for being wrong, but for being visibly different at the wrong moment. This law does not praise conformity of mind, quite the opposite. Greene encourages deep, independent thinking, questioning assumptions, doubting orthodoxies, cultivating original perspectives. But he insists on separating inner freedom from outer behavior. One is essential, the other is optional and often costly. Outward conformity acts as camouflage. By blending in, you lower defenses. You gain access. You are allowed to observe, learn, and maneuver. When people see you as one of us, they stop watching closely. That invisibility is a form of protection and leverage. Greene also notes that reformers fail when they challenge too much at once. Social change, when it succeeds, often wears familiar clothing. New ideas are smuggled inside old rituals. Radical shifts are presented as natural extensions of tradition. The surface remains reassuring while the substance evolves quietly. There is also a psychological freedom here. When you stop needing others to recognize your difference, you reclaim energy. You are no longer performing rebellion. You are simply thinking clearly while moving smoothly through the world. Law 38 is ultimately about timing and survival. Display difference only when your position is secure, your allies strong, and the environment receptive. Until then, let your thoughts roam freely, but let your behavior signal familiarity.
Law 39. Stir up waters to catch fish. This law explores a counterintuitive strategy, deliberate disturbance as a diagnostic tool. While most people strive to keep situations calm and predictable, Greene argues that controlled chaos can reveal truths that tranquility conceals. When waters are still, motives remain hidden. People perform politeness, they manage impressions, they suppress impulses. But when emotions are stirred, through pressure, uncertainty, or provocation, masks slip. reactions surface, loyalties wobble, weaknesses announce themselves without needing interrogation. Greene is careful here. This is not a call for reckless disruption. Random chaos destroys trust and credibility. The key word is controlled. The powerful do not explode. They apply pressure selectively, watching closely as others respond. A sudden change in plans, an unexpected question, a mild provocation, a strategic delay. These small disturbances create psychological ripples. Some people panic, others overreact. Some rush to defend themselves unnecessarily. Others reveal ambition, fear, resentment, or guilt. In still water, these traits remain submerged. In motion, they float to the surface. Greene emphasizes emotional asymmetry. The one who stirs the waters must remain calm. If you are emotionally invested in the disturbance, you lose your advantage. Your goal is observation, not catharsis. The moment you react visibly, you become just another fish in the current. This law is especially useful against enemies who appear composed and righteous. Calm can be a performance. By introducing uncertainty, you force them to improvise, and improvisation exposes character. Power often lies not in what people say when prepared, but in what they do when unsettled. There is also a warning embedded here. Those who constantly stir waters become predictable themselves. People learn to brace for disruption. The tactic loses its edge. Use it sparingly and only when clarity is worth the risk. In essence, Law 39 teaches that stability is not always your friend. Sometimes insight requires turbulence. When used with restraint and emotional discipline, stirring the waters allows you to see the true shape of those swimming around you before deciding your next move. Law 40. Despise the free lunch. This final law closes the book with a warning that sounds almost moral, but is deeply strategic. What costs you nothing financially may cost you everything in power. Greene dismantles the seductive myth of the free offer. In social, political, and professional life, gifts are rarely acts of pure generosity. They are investments. They create obligations, expectations, invisible strings. When you accept what you did not earn, you often surrender more than you realize: autonomy, leverage, or the right to refuse later. Power depends on independence. The moment you rely on another's generosity, you place yourself on uneven ground. Gratitude turns into hesitation. Hesitation turns into compliance. The giver gains not because they demanded control, but because you granted it preemptively. Historically, patronage systems thrived on this dynamic. Kings, nobles, and benefactors offered protection, money, or opportunity, not to uplift freely, but to bind loyalties. The recipient appeared favored, but was quietly owned. Greene's insight is that modern life has not outgrown this logic, it has simply refined it. There is also a psychological cost to the free lunch. What is given without effort is often undervalued. People protect what they pay for, whether with money, time, or sacrifice. When something arrives effortlessly, it carries less weight, less respect, and less commitment. Dependence weakens discipline. Greene contrasts this with the power of paying your own way. When you insist on exchange, fair payment, mutual benefit, you maintain clarity. No one feels owed. No one feels trapped. Transactions end cleanly without lingering moral debt. This law does not condemn generosity itself. It warns against hidden imbalance. A gift that places one party permanently above the other is not kindness, it is control disguised as benevolence. The powerful understand this and often prefer to give openly, extravagantly, and without expectation because they can afford to. The powerless cannot. In practice, Greene advises cultivating self-sufficiency wherever possible. Pay for what you use, earn what you receive, decline what compromises your freedom, even if it appears advantageous in the short term. Short-term relief often produces long-term dependency. Law 40 brings the book full circle. Power, from the first law to the last, is about perception, positioning, and control, especially control over oneself. To despise the free lunch is to choose dignity over convenience, autonomy over comfort, and long-term strength over short-term gain. Law 41. Avoid stepping into a great man's shoes. This law is about inheritance, comparison, and the quiet violence of expectations. Greene warns that following a legendary predecessor is one of the most dangerous positions in any hierarchy. The problem is not incompetence, it is contrast. When a predecessor is admired, idealized, or mythologized, they stop being a person and become a benchmark. Anyone who comes after is judged not on their own terms, but against an exaggerated memory. Even excellence can feel like failure when measured against legend. Greene's insight is psychological. People cling to familiar greatness. A successor is unconsciously resented for replacing what once felt permanent. Any deviation is criticized as betrayal. Any similarity is dismissed as imitation. The shoes are too large, not because the predecessor was perfect, but because nostalgia enlarges them. History offers a pattern. Sons crushed by famous fathers, protégés overshadowed by iconic mentors, leaders undone by trying to continue the tradition. The mistake is trying to inherit authority instead of redefining it. Greene advises a strategic break. If you must follow a great figure, do not compete directly. Change the rules, shift the style, alter the direction. Create a contrast so clear that comparison becomes irrelevant. When you establish a new identity, people stop measuring and start recalibrating. There is also a deeper warning here. Reverence for the past can become a prison. Institutions often cling to old formulas long after conditions have changed. The successor who merely preserves legacy risks irrelevance, or rebellion from those craving renewal. Greene does not advocate disrespect, he advocates distance. Honor the past privately, but never publicly chain yourself to it. Power flows toward originality, not imitation. At its core, Law 41 teaches this: authority cannot be borrowed, it must be generated. The moment you stop trying to live up to a legend and start shaping your own frame, comparison dissolves, and space opens up for real power to emerge. Law 42. Strike the shepherd and the sheep will scatter. This law focuses on leadership and the structural dynamics of power. Greene observes that groups, organizations, and movements often revolve around one person who embodies authority, charisma, or control, the shepherd. Remove that central figure, and the followers, the sheep, lose direction, cohesion, and confidence. The principle is deceptively simple. Attack the source, and the system collapses. Chaos ensues not because the followers are weak, but because human loyalty and obedience are relational, not structural. People defer to leaders more than ideas. When the leader disappears, so does clarity. Greene provides historical examples. Tyrants overthrown destabilize armies. Revolutionary leaders eliminated fracture their movements. Companies falter when a founder or CEO unexpectedly exits. The ripple is not always immediate, but it is predictable. Power is concentrated in the figure who organizes perception and emotion. Strategically, this law emphasizes precision. Target the linchpin, not the masses. Confronting a group collectively wastes resources and risks unpredictable backlash. By neutralizing the core, you achieve maximum effect with minimal confrontation. The law also functions defensively. Leaders must protect their visibility and authority carefully. When threats arise, strengthening the perception of indispensability is as crucial as actual competence. Being the shepherd grants power, but it also attracts danger. Greene warns that the ethical dimension is secondary. The law is descriptive. The moral calculus is irrelevant to survival. Power, he argues repeatedly, is amoral. It responds to human psychology, not ideals. At its heart, Law 42 teaches that influence often has a keystone. Understand where the real power resides, and you can act decisively. Ignore it, and your efforts scatter like leaves in a storm. Greene shifts from control through force to influence through affection. Law 43. Work on the hearts and minds of others. This law emphasizes a principle often underestimated in the pursuit of power. People follow what they love, not what they fear, at least for the long term. While intimidation can produce obedience, it rarely creates loyalty or lasting influence. Greene argues that enduring power comes from shaping the emotions, desires, and beliefs of others. The heart and mind refers to both emotional and intellectual engagement. People are driven by a mix of fear, hope, admiration, and aspiration. To influence effectively, one must align these drives with your objectives. Force may move bodies, persuasion moves intentions, and when intentions are aligned, obedience becomes effortless. Greene highlights several tactics: praise selectively, appeal to vanity, validate beliefs, and offer a sense of inclusion. People defend and promote the things that make them feel important, valued, and understood. By creating a perception of respect and recognition, you convert passive followers into active supporters. A key point is subtlety. Overt manipulation is easily detected and resisted. Influence is most effective when it feels voluntary, natural, and emotionally rewarding. The moment people suspect coercion disguised as kindness, resentment replaces loyalty. The law also has a defensive side. Those who understand how hearts and minds are shaped can recognize when they are being manipulated. Awareness becomes a shield, allowing you to choose whose influence you accept and whose you reject. Greene underscores that power is not about making others like you superficially. It is about embedding your presence in their motivations. This ensures compliance even when direct oversight is impossible, and it creates an emotional buffer against rebellion or betrayal. Ultimately, Law 43 teaches that enduring power is not imposed, it is nurtured. Control hearts and minds, and the body will follow willingly. Influence that respects psychology, desires, and human emotion is far more durable than intimidation alone. Law 44. Disarm and infuriate with the mirror effect. Greene introduces a deceptively simple yet psychologically potent tactic: mirroring others to control, confuse, or manipulate them. By reflecting someone's actions, attitudes, or words, you create a sense of familiarity that can disarm suspicion, gain trust, or provoke frustration. The mirror effect works on two levels. First, it builds rapport. Humans are naturally drawn to similarity. Subtle mimicry, matching gestures, tone, or phrasing, can make others feel understood and aligned, lowering defenses. Second, it can be used offensively. By holding up a person's own behavior, weaknesses, or tendencies, you force them to confront themselves, often inducing irritation or overreaction. Greene emphasizes strategic precision. Mirroring must be subtle. Obvious imitation provokes ridicule or anger. The skill lies in influencing perception without revealing intent. A well-executed mirror can make opponents predictable while keeping you emotionally insulated. There is also a psychological trap for the mirrored individual. People rarely recognize the reflection consciously. They may feel discomfort, irritation, or confusion, but they often misattribute it to themselves, their surroundings, or their own indecision, while the mirrorer retains clarity and composure. Greene cites historical examples of diplomacy, court intrigue, and battlefield tactics where leaders used this technique to destabilize rivals. By reflecting behaviors, the manipulator turns the opponent's energy against them, exposing vulnerabilities without direct confrontation. This law also serves defensively. Being aware of the mirror effect allows you to spot when someone is subtly manipulating your perception, giving you the choice to resist, redirect, or neutralize the tactic. At its core, Law 44 teaches that power often lies in psychological subtlety rather than overt force. The mirror reflects more than appearances. It reflects the inner dynamics of control. Master it, and you can manipulate reactions, provoke clarity, or defuse hostility, all while remaining largely untouchable. Law 45. Preach the need for change, but never reform too much at once. This law addresses one of the most common errors of reformers, leaders, and visionaries: confusing necessity with speed. Greene argues that while people often complain about the present, they fear the unknown far more than they resent the familiar. As a result, rapid or total reform triggers resistance, even from those who benefit from it. Human beings anchor their sense of safety in routines, symbols, and traditions. These may be inefficient, irrational, or outdated, but they are psychologically stabilizing. When change threatens too many of these anchors at once, it creates anxiety. Anxiety hardens into opposition. Opposition seeks a leader, and rebellion is born. Greene's insight is strategic. Successful change must feel like continuity, not rupture. The most effective reformers cloak innovation in the language of tradition. They frame change as restoration, improvement, or fulfillment of old values rather than a rejection of them. The surface remains familiar while the substance shifts quietly underneath. This is why revolutions that move too fast often collapse or turn brutal. They strip away symbols before new ones can take root. They demand adaptation before people are psychologically ready. In contrast, gradual reform allows time for emotional adjustment. Resistance weakens not because it is defeated, but because it dissolves. Greene also warns against moral arrogance. Reformers often assume that being right guarantees acceptance. It does not. People do not evaluate change logically, they experience it emotionally. Even beneficial change feels like loss when it arrives too abruptly. The law also applies on a personal level. If you rise to power and immediately overhaul systems, relationships, or expectations, you signal instability. Allies grow nervous, opponents unite. By preserving familiar structures at first, you buy trust and time, both essential currencies of power. Greene does not argue against change itself, he argues for sequencing. Introduce reforms incrementally. Let people participate emotionally. Allow them to believe the change was partly their idea. When adaptation feels voluntary, resistance evaporates. At its core, Law 45 teaches that power is not threatened by change, but by shock. Move too fast and you provoke fear. Move deliberately and people will follow you into transformations they would have fiercely resisted all at once. Law 46. Never appear too perfect. This law addresses a quiet social danger. Flawlessness invites envy, and envy is one of the most corrosive forces in human systems. When you appear too talented, too successful, too composed, or too fortunate, you trigger a comparison people did not ask for and cannot escape. Greene's point is psychological. Most people tolerate superiority only when it feels distant, abstract, or earned through suffering. Visible perfection, especially without apparent cost, feels like an accusation. It exposes others' insecurities, and insecurity seeks relief. That relief often comes in the form of gossip, sabotage, moral judgment, or passive resistance. The solution is not mediocrity, but strategic imperfection. Reveal small flaws, admit minor weaknesses, attribute success partly to luck, timing, or help from others. These gestures humanize you. They reduce the threat you pose to others' self-image while preserving your actual advantage. Greene emphasizes that envy rarely announces itself. It disguises itself as concern, criticism, humor, or helpful advice. The envious do not attack your strengths directly. They undermine your reputation, isolate you socially, or wait patiently for you to slip. Appearing modest and fallible deprives envy of oxygen. There is also a defensive elegance here. When you control the narrative of your imperfections, you deny others the pleasure of exposing them. Voluntary vulnerability becomes armor. It makes attacks seem petty and ill-intentioned by contrast. This law applies especially to those rising quickly. Sudden success magnifies visibility, and visibility magnifies resentment. By softening your image without weakening your position, you move more freely through hostile terrain. Greene is not advising dishonesty about competence, he is advising wisdom about display. Power that advertises itself invites challenge. Power that appears natural, balanced, and humanized is tolerated and often protected by the very people it surpasses. Law 46 teaches that survival at the top depends not only on strength, but on perception. When others can live comfortably beside your success, they are less likely to conspire against it. Law 47. Do not go past the mark you aimed for. In victory, learn when to stop. This law is a warning against excess, the quiet arrogance that creeps in after success. Greene observes that many downfalls occur not during struggle, but immediately after triumph. The enemy is no longer opposition, it is overconfidence. Success creates momentum, and momentum creates illusion. You begin to believe your judgment is infallible, your reach unlimited, your luck permanent. In this state, restraint feels unnecessary. Why stop when you are winning? Why consolidate when you can expand? This is precisely when power begins to erode. Greene's insight is strategic. Every victory alters the landscape. Allies grow cautious. Rivals regroup. Observers reassess you as a threat. When you continue pushing after achieving your objective, you change perceptions and often invite resistance that did not previously exist. History is filled with conquerors, executives, and leaders who crossed the invisible line between strength and overreach. What began as justified ambition turns into greed. What felt like confidence turns into provocation. The same actions that once inspired admiration now generate fear and coalition against you. Knowing when to stop is not weakness, it is mastery. Consolidation, securing gains, stabilizing relationships, lowering visibility, protects power far more effectively than constant expansion. The wise pause to let the dust settle, allowing success to normalize rather than threaten. Greene also notes the psychological difficulty of restraint. Victory produces emotional highs. Stopping feels like loss, even when it is rational. This is why discipline matters most when things are going well. The moment you feel invincible is the moment you are most exposed. This law also applies to personal conflicts. When you have clearly won an argument, a negotiation, or a rivalry, pressing further humiliates the other party, and humiliation breeds revenge. Leaving them a shred of dignity preserves peace. Total domination creates long memory. Law 47 teaches that power is not proven by how far you can go, but by how precisely you can stop. Those who survive longest are not the most aggressive, but the most calibrated, able to recognize when success has reached its optimal point and excess would only invite decline.
Law 48. Assume formlessness. This final law dissolves all the others. After 47 principles built on strategy, psychology, and structure, Greene ends by removing structure altogether. His argument is almost philosophical. The moment power becomes fixed, it becomes predictable, and what is predictable can be attacked. Formlessness is adaptability elevated to a principle. It means refusing to cling to identities, roles, methods, or reputations so tightly that they begin to control you. When you harden into a single shape, always aggressive, always diplomatic, always silent, always visible, you simplify yourself for your enemies. They learn your rhythm. They prepare. They wait. Greene draws inspiration from water. It has no shape of its own, yet it erodes stone, fills any container, and survives every obstacle by yielding without surrendering. Water does not oppose force head-on, it redirects it. This is the essence of formless power. Throughout the book, many laws emphasize deception, restraint, timing, and perception. Law 48 unifies them by insisting that no single law should ever become your identity. The moment you say, "This is how I operate," you freeze yourself into a target. Formlessness also protects against internal decay. When people succeed, they often fall in love with the strategy that worked. They repeat it long after conditions have changed. What once brought power becomes a habit. Habit becomes blindness. Blindness becomes downfall. Greene warns against becoming a caricature of your former self. Power demands constant recalibration. Situations shift. People evolve. Contexts mutate. Only those willing to shed old skins survive new environments. There is also a psychological liberation here. When you are not attached to a fixed self-image, insults lose their grip. Failures do not define you. Success does not trap you. You move fluidly between roles, tactics, and personas as circumstances require. Law 48 does not reject principles, it rejects rigidity. It asks you to treat power not as a rule book, but as a living system.
observe, adapt, absorb, redirect, disappear when necessary, reappear elsewhere, changed. This is why Greene ends here. The ultimate lesson of the 48 Laws of Power is not domination, manipulation, or control over others. It is mastery over one's own responses to an unpredictable world. Power that can change shape cannot be cornered, and what cannot be cornered cannot be destroyed.